Let's
Yeah,
go.
that's fine. That's fine. Good day and welcome. You are listening to Love Bay Afrobeat Music Radio, coming all the way from the studios in Toronto, and of course, connected to all kinds of cities and countries around the world. And we are glad that you're here joining us today. And we're very, very grateful to our brother Theo, who has done an exceptional work over the years to ensure that we tap into the social media and make use of it, not for personal gain, but for educational purposes, for entertainment, and making sure that we do the best we can to bring knowledge to one another. One of my uh, the respected educationist is an indigenous woman, Dr. Emily Farris. She's a Moose Cree First Nation here in Canada. And she says education, knowledge is empowerment. It really is, because when you know things, you are empowering yourself. And that's what this show is about. And so we're glad you're here. And in a moment, we will be joined by our guest, Dr. Nana Oduro Kwateng. So we're looking forward to that. And so he should be joining us not long from now. In the meantime, we want to hear from you. So wherever you are, please write notes. If you're in the Toronto area, feel free to call. Our brother Theo makes sure that information is disseminated along the way, and we want this to be an interactive session for sure. And on a topic like today, when we are celebrating our giants in Africa, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, we don't have enough time. I can assure you, before we even get started, we don't have enough time to be able to share, cross pollinate, exchange ideas as we look into his legacy, but also moving forward. I usually think of the 3Ds. We dialogue to discover things that will help us to decide what the next steps are. So that's what we're going to be doing today. So feel free, feel free to share your ideas, ask questions. It is very clear, brothers and sisters around the world, that something has happened and continues to happen in Africa. I like what my brother Theo says. He says, the world needs Africa, but I'm not too sure if Africa needs the world. I guess that could be debatable, but we are um, more and more beginning to realize that we have something to contribute to the world. By the way, there's a difference between do you have something to say or do you have to say something? Sometimes we find that we have people who have nothing to say and then they try to say it and they usually take very, very long to say it. And I actually don't like it when somebody gets up and he says, I really don't have anything to say, but I'd like to say something. And I'm like, if you have nothing to say, please just shut up, just be quiet and let those who have something to say, because there's a difference between I have something to say and I just have to say something. So you don't have to say anything if you have nothing to say. But over the years, one of the things that I know contributed to the legacy that has been passed on to us by Pan Africanists, the likes of Dr. Nkrumah, is his commitment to education. I mentioned earlier that Dr. Emily Ferris, who is Moose Cree First Nation in Canada, says that knowledge is empowerment. It's empowering ourselves. And Dr. Nkrumah picked that up at a very, very early age. And his involvement, not just in, 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 in the political realm, but in teaching, making sure that education became part of what was happening in Ghana, and the fact that he saw that the freedom experienced by Ghana was really the foundation for the freedom for the rest of Africa. And he was that committed to sharing his ideologies and saying that Ghana becoming free is not good enough. That should be reflective of the freedom that should be expressed right across Africa. So we're just delighted today that we have this opportunity to be together. And so, welcome to our brother Theo, Love Bay Afrobeat Music Talk Radio, all the way from the studios in Toronto. And I see our brother John Daniels all the way from Accra. We're glad to see you. And so something is happening, something has happened, and something will continue to happen in Africa, from Africa, and impacting the world. So, um, brother JD, it's good to see you.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So, tell us what's the temperature like in light. I mean, I know Ghana is very influential and Ghana is big. It's not like a little subdivision of Africa. It is very, very influential on the continent. Tell us, what are some of the things that we're picking up about the legacy of Dr. Nkrumah, and your own thoughts just as we get
Yeah.
started.
Okay. Thank you, Doc. Kwame Nkrumah is a colossus, and he's the embodiment of the nation state called Ghana. In fact, he is the foremost pillar and founder of the nation state called Ghana. During the independence struggle, he has educated himself in the America, USA, and continued in Britain. He did a lot of active work by way of organization for the emancipation of Africa in Britain. In fact, the Pan-African conference that took place in Britain, he was co-secretary with, I think, George Patmore, or one of the earlier Black American fighters. So he was invited to join the elites who were in the forefront for the struggle in Ghana. And when he came back to Ghana, he was given the post of the general secretary. When he had that position, Kwame Nkrumah did not sit in Accra like the lawyers and the big men who formed the UGCC, but he rather moved to all the parts of Ghana, or Gold Coast then. You know, at that time, 1948, 47, till 51, and even 57, Ghana was under the colonial rule, British colonial rule. So we needed to fight and get our freedom or emancipate ourselves. And Kwame Nkrumah, when he took the position of the general secretary, he did not sit in Accra. In fact, to be honest, Gold Coast was only the southern states, the southern state from Takoradi to the Volta region, which shares a common border with Togo. And that's where the UGCC was organizing. But when Kwame Nkrumah came, he ventured deeper into the Gold Coast to organize. He organized in the Ashanti territory. He went further to the Northern Territories to organize. In fact, the Northern Territories were being administered by Britain separately from the Ashanti territory. And the Ashanti territory was being ruled separately from the coastal territories. So it was Kwame Nkrumah who ventured into the length and breadth of the Gold Coast to fight, to organize for our emancipation. And interestingly enough, oh, Doc is here. Okay. Yeah. Interestingly enough, Yeah, not this year. So interesting enough, there was this Second World War. So these ex-service people had gone to fight in Burma and other places in support of their lives. They were promised a lot of goodies, retirement benefits after they are returned to the Gold Coast. But you know, the colonialists, they promise you one thing and will not your it. So the SW men were not very happy. And Kwame Nkrumah seized the opportunity, had series of meetings with them, and mobilized them. And of course, we are told, even the petition that the SW men sent to the governor at that time, it was Kwame Nkrumah who drafted it for them to present it. And of course, the British was having all the, the bauxite, the gold, and the natural resources from Ghana, so they were not ready to relinquish their hold on the Gold Coast. And when the SW men got to that place, the British police officer commanded his men to shoot them, and of course he did the shooting finally and killed some of the people. So that brought a lot of agitation into the country. And after that, there was this boycott too by a chief in Ghana, because at that time most of the commercial stores were owned by the whites, the Europeans, the Syrians, the Indians, and well, Ghanaians were doing the menial jobs, the watchmen and farmers. And the goods on the market were so exorbitant. So there was this other boycott too, which added to the SW men agitation, brought a lot of strikes and what have you in the country. And
Brother JD,
the colonial government decided to, yes, sir.
Brother JD, I'm going to be a rude host here. We need to welcome our guest, but we don't want you to lose your line of thought.
Well,
So I will definitely come back.
Get the time for me. Yeah.
Yeah, I will definitely come
back
to you, but we need to welcome our special guest. Yes. So
it's more resource. So I'm okay with that.
That's right. We are delighted today. Of course, you're listening to Love Bay Afrobeat Music Talk Radio Show, coming all the way from the studios in Toronto, in Canada. And today we are talking about the legacy and moving forward as far as remembering giants of Africa, Pan-Africanists, the likes of my namesake, Dr. Francis Kwame Nkrumah. And we're delighted that we have Dr. Nana Bright Oduro with us today. And so he's not just a person who has had knowledge about Dr. Nkrumah. He is someone who is in the thick and thin of these ideologies and sharing and participating and having been part of this ideology that really transformed not just Ghana, but has influenced Africa and the world at large. So, Dr. Oduro, we need to welcome you, sir. Thank you very much for being with us today. Please take a moment. Yeah, please take a moment just to share a little bit. You have a resume that will take us the whole hour just to share what you have been doing. But just briefly introduce yourself a little bit and tell us what is happening as we think of Dr. Kwame Nkrumah.
Thank you, comrade. Let me take this opportunity to thank you so much for inviting me to be part of this very important topic. Especially to my comrade, JB, who actually introduced me to you, and today we are here. I think JB was flowing. It's unfair that he has been kind of what he was presenting is so juicy and very important, because you see, one of the biggest issue that we are facing, especially people what I term as the new colonialists, the people who are neoliberals in Ghana and maybe in Africa, is this concept about Nkrumah not being the founder of Ghana, modern Ghana. I mean, to the extent that in Ghana today we have a government which has gone to the length and breadth to be able to change the whole concept and the notion of Nkrumah being a founder, and created what they call Founders Day. Founders Day with an apostrophe in front of the S instead of apostrophe before the S. And it's all an attempt to be able to distort the history of not only in Ghana but Africa. It's not just by coincidence that Ghana became the first country in sub-Saharan Africa to get independence. But the reality is that we talk about Gold Coast when the colonialists came 100 years ago. Gold Coast by definition comprised of a very limited geographical space. Gold Coast was not, Ashanti, for instance, was not part of Gold Coast. The Northern Protectorate was not part of Gold Coast. The Transvolta Togoland was not part of Gold Coast. It was only Nkrumah, one person with a vision and a passion of clear leadership and commitment to what he described as African personality, pieced together, brought Transvolta Togoland, brought in the Northern Protectorate, and brought in Ashanti to make it Ghana. So when we talk about Ghana, there's no doubt about who actually is the founder of Ghana. And today, a lot of people are trying to distort it. You say, oh, there were so many people who were involved in making the independence possible, here. So we can talk about thousands of people. And I think Kwame JB was talking about the role that, in fact, the ex-servicemen played. Very critical. Very critical. So why don't we honor Sergeant Ajete and Adate and those people who actually fell, died, as a result of the British firing them? Why don't we? But we all know, in football, in rugby, in basketball, in anything, when one person scores, we hail and congratulate. Of course, people have contributed and dribbled and given the pass. Nkrumah is the founder of modern Ghana. I want to make that. You see, when we talk about his legacy and achievements, it's second to none. I mean, his role in Ghana's independence is something that we all know. But I mean, one of the things that is also standard about his Pan-Africanism, commitment, the whole notion of a unity of Africa. Today we are talking about African continental free trade, and there are people who are shouting from the rooftop. The very people who fought Nkrumah. One of the things that we used against Nkrumah to justify his overthrow, that he was a megalomaniac, and that he wanted to use Ghana's resources to build a United Africa to become president. Today, we are talking about continental African free trade because it is good for us to be able to trade as a continent. Nkrumah saw this and said all these things, before. And not only just he talked about it, he hosted the first, if you like, conference of independent African state in 1958, a year after independence, and bring this independent African state together, with a view that we should be able to work together. Also, either we unite or we perish, and we can talk about, promoting of education and infrastructure development and, social reforms. I mean, Nkrumah stands out. I mean, this is a leader who was selfless, a leader who owned no property. Look, I happen to be a chief director, which is a permanent secretary in the civil service in Ghana, in Ministry of Tourism. I work with the socialist movement, and then we got Nkrumah's clothes and some of his books and all that, and where his mausoleum is. We've created a whole area where we put Nkrumah's clothes. We got it from the children, Gamel in Egypt. And if you look at the clothes, even his underwears, his singlets, it has got a stamp of the property of Ghana. This is the mark of a man who is selfless. Everything about him is about Ghana. All his clothes, his suit has stamps, property of Ghana. He never owned a car. He had no property. Everything that he owns, even the Cadillac that the British colonial left, it's all owned. If you go inside, it's written property of Ghana. How many African leaders Can you compare their behavior or their leadership to the what Nkrumah did? And then you talk about education and healthcare. Oh my goodness, what Nkrumah has done, not only in terms of education and health, even in industrial infrastructure, industrialization, establishing state-owned enterprises, promoting local industry to reduce economic dependency of this foreign. This is a man who believes that Africa personality, self-reliance is a key to our development. And he says the black man is capable of managing his whole affairs. He doesn't feel any inferior. Today, we in Africa, and especially in Ghana, today, our youth has been completely indoctrinated. In fact, our culture has been completely, destroyed. And the people even, are using creams to bleach to become like white people. We have a situation whereby our media, our television is presented by foreign films and all that. Nkrumah went further in Nkrumah by developing Academy of Arts. Nkrumah did so. Everything that he did is to be able to uplift the personality of the African people. And in Ghana today, look at where we are. Our situation is like the pre-independence. The question I always ask people that, look, and I have asked this question to the current president of Ghana, Nana Akufo-Addo, who I happened to work with in the 70s, when we were fighting against military dictatorship. And I asked him about 6 years ago, I said, why did we fight for independence? We fought for independence because we wanted to have control of our own resources. We wanted to be able to rule ourselves. We wanted to do the things that will improve the quality of life of our people. Today in Ghana, we don't control anything. The whole country is run, by foreigners. Today, our economy is completely controlled by foreigners. So in essence, Nkrumah was right. Neo-colonialism has actually, if you are not careful, we will move to a situation whereby we are talking about recolonized. We will be recolonized the way we are going. And it's so depressing, to think that Ghana, that became the star pupil of Pan-Africanism and progressive politics, is where we are today. I'll just end there, but to say that, look, what you guys are doing, you don't know the impact you are making. This is important. And it's not because we are doing for Nkrumah. We're representing a certain phenomena. We believe that our society must be organized in such a way that society will be able to utilize its own resources to improve the quality of its own people. That society will be able to empower its young people to be able to be independent, to be able to, harness its creativity, the entrepreneurship of our people. We can do it. We can do it. We don't need, our young people are crossing the Sahara Desert and dying. Look at crossing the Mediterranean Sea and dying. Why? And we have everything in Africa. We have everything in Ghana. And that is what Kwame Nkrumah represents. So nobody, the people who actually say things negative about Kwame Nkrumah, you should know who they are. In fact, they even go to the extent that when the colonialists were leaving, they left Ghana money, or they left the original money. Such a warped mind. A colonialist who came to plunder and pillage your resources. When he's leaving, he will leave resources for you. These are kind of propaganda. It's so. Forgive me, my French. Sometimes you don't understand where these people are coming from. Nkrumah started everything from scratch, and in fact, he believed in the people. If you listen to the speech that he gave on the 6th March 1957, he acknowledged that we are going to be able to work. We need to work very hard. It's not going to be easy, but he promised them one thing, that he will not let them down. And that since he came to the country, he has promised the youth and the farmers, the women, that we are going to work together to liberate ourselves, to break away from the shackles of colonialism and imperialism. And Nkrumah, that is from the 6th of March, 1957. If you look, let me tell you something, my own personal experience as an activist of CPP. The little I saw about Nkrumah, the way market women, I'm telling you, the headquarters of the Convention People's Party was built by the women, the traders in Ghana. They contributed money to build it. It's not state money. That tells you the kind of support base that Kwame Nkrumah. He believed in the masses. And look, my father worked with Kwame Nkrumah. One of the things that he used to tell us is that, look, Nkrumah, they didn't understand socialism, but what Nkrumah made them to understand is that we are one of the brothers keepers, that we have everything, we should work together. Nkrumah visited my father's hometown at Dansefomena in a way back in the 40s here and there, and he said the man's demeanor, they gave him a special room, and he said, I'm not going to sleep there. He slept in my father and his brother's room, ramshackle room. He slept with them. He had the same food. They were preparing special food. He said, no, we eat the same food. Mosquito bite, mosquitoes were biting, and he was there with them. This is the leader, selfless. Look, I came to UK, and happy to meet Nkrumah's children. We were washing plates. We were kitchen porters together, so that they can make money. They're working to make money to pay for their fees. To learn. Nkrumah's children. I mean, this man had the opportunity to have so much money. Why didn't he still? In fact, his children they lost their dad. Nkrumah didn't see his children as his only biological ownership. He sees every one of us as his children. As a young pioneer, living in the opposite Flagstaff House, which is called the Flagstaff House Quarters, where my father used to stay here and there. Every Saturday or Sunday, when he's less busy, you come in a white short and white t-shirt and come with goodies here and there. And we are playing football on this dry land here and there. And you come and play with us. And when you finish, you sit down and give us sweets. And you keep on telling us that we are the future. My brother, that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about 10, 11 years ago. I was about 10, 11 years ago. But it's stuck in my head that this man is different. He's unique. He's different. He mingles with us. When you come and you are eating here and there, you come and put his name. You call my father, Kojo, I'm coming to eat with my children. He will come and take somebody's food here and there. And then, he'll run like that. We'll follow him. This is the mark of the true leadership. But unfortunately, many people don't see that. The problem we have as Nkrumahs and the CPPs is that majority of our younger people, the majority of our youth in Ghana, between the age of 15 to 35, do not know Nkrumah. In fact, actually, they haven't even read about him. It's only recently that they maybe have heard about him. So we have an onerous responsibility to be able to educate people, to be able to talk about not Nkrumah as an individual, but what he stood for and what he represents and the hope that he brings to us. Because being an Nkrumah and being a CPP is not an abstract. You can feel it in terms of the work that Nkrumah did. I mean, here you are, my brother. If I will have the time to take you through some of his achievements. What Nkrumah did between 1957 to 1966 in that short period of time, the infrastructure that he built, I mean, and today, if you come to Ghana and you do a panoramic view to look in terms of where things are, I'm telling you, 80% of everything that you see was built during Nkrumah's time. It was built by the CPP government. And this was CPP government, which was made up of people who were called non-entities, veranda boys. They didn't have a PhD like you and I. They didn't have a university education or secondary education. Majority of them may maybe have a standard for education, or some of them only just happen to read and write English. And they were the ministers for roads and highways. They were the health ministers. The person who built the Tamamoto Way, one of our prestigious landmark in Nkrumah built, had no civil engineering background, had no secondary education. He was just a standard for education here and there. But if you look at the quality of the road, which have lasted almost about 60, Ghana had a motorway before Britain. I mean, UK now. Britain M1 was built in 1964. We had ours in 1963. So this is the vision of Nkrumah. So when we are talking about Nkrumah, it's not abstract. It is what you see in terms of what it represents. And let me end like this. Also, yeah, apart from intellectual level, he was a prolific writer. He authored almost about 13 books. And if you read the books, what is in the books, it's as if it's in front of you. You read Africa Must Unite, and you will think that is this man still talking like this? Everything that he said has come to pass. You look, he predicted about the European Union, how they are going to ensure that the European Union will work with North American countries to be able to enslave and recolonize Africa. Is there? Africa must unite. Dark days in Ghana. You read them and you will see. Conakry years. So this man, apart from everything, he was not lazy. He was an intellectual giant, a prolific writer, someone who thought deep about things, and also solidly grounded in Marxism, Leninism, and believe in socialism, and for me, I'm passionate about Nkrumah, because of what he stood for what he represents, and the thing that he's done, not only in Ghana and not only in Africa, but in the whole world, because he is a light of hope for what he represents. I'll leave it like that, and maybe I'll come back later on. Sorry if I've gone too long, but I'm very passionate when it comes to Nkrumah. Nkrumah never dies.
Dr. Nana Oduro, you don't have to apologize for anything, sir. We're delighted you are here with us today. This is a defining moment for us to have people like yourself who have embraced the ideology. I was delighted to hear you make reference to not just the man, but the ideology, the concepts that have evolved out of all this. I mean, there's no doubt, especially when you think of the philosophy and strategic movements that came out of his ideas. It takes a lot, Dr. Oduro, to organize boycotts and strikes. You have to be intelligent, but not only that, you have to negotiate and you have to interact with people. You made reference to the place of women in politics and even in the development. Unfortunately, you see, it's sad how we have allowed the Western culture, which looked down at women, to actually think that the men are the ones in charge. And yet he realized that the power of the nation emerged from everybody working together, including women. And so we have a lot to learn. And I know that our brother JD was all fired up, and we don't want him to lose his steam.
Yes. Let him come back, because what he was presenting is very juicy, very good. Very good stuff.
So, Brother JD, please just highlight a few things before we move on, because we do have a lot of questions and we really need to give Dr. Oduro lots of time today. And let me say this, we don't have enough time today, so we have to bring you back, and that's not a threat.
Oh yes, anytime.
It's not a threat, it's a promise. We want to have you come
Fantastic.
back. So
fantastic. Don't worry, what is a threat? If it's a threat, it's a good threat. Don't worry.
Brother JD, you were on this trajectory. We don't want you to lose your thought there, but please share a few things before we come back to Dr. Oduro.
I also have a lot of questions for Dr. Oduro, but
yes,
if it's actually continue with my trajectory, I'll just use some 2 minutes to finish. Yeah, so arising out of the agitations, the British colonialists saw that, Ghana at that time was started as a very rich country. You have the gold, you have the bauxite, you have the manganese, you have the cocoa. And the British government did not want to lose Ghana by way of disturbance, so that we will go through the route of what the other African countries went, by way of bush wars and guerrilla wars and what have you. So when they saw that the strikes and the agitations were the tempo was so high, they could not calm it down, they decided to negotiate, bringing in the constitution and what have you. So the first elections in 1951, a year before I was born, Kwame Nkrumah and the CPP swept almost everything. And Kwame Nkrumah was made the leader of government business. At that time, Ghana was not yet independent. But Kwame Nkrumah, by that arrangement with the British colonialists, he was made a leader of government business. So he formed a small cabinet. Of course, all the portfolio like finance, security was with the governor. But at least we have some local Ghanaian ministers, about 9 or 11 of them. And if you, from 1951 to 1957, before they granted us the independence, if you look at the work they did, the number of schools they built, the infrastructure, the roads, especially the railways, the hospitals. In fact, as Dr. Dro said, you cannot mention, if you come to Ghana right now, almost all the infrastructure has survived until now that we can use. Be hospitals, bigger hospitals, medical school, the first medical school and everything, the universities, the major state universities, everything is attributable to Kwame Nkrumah. And apart from putting up the medical school to train doctors for Ghana, he had a sense of mind or purpose to send somebody, a doctor, to China to go and study the herbal system in China. And he came back to set up Mampong School for traditional medicine and herbal medicine. Look at that. At that time, he had the wisdom to see that the herbs, the forest we have medicinal value. And if you use it raw without measurements and standards, you harm, the side effects will be more. So he sent somebody to go to China to study them and come and set up that center so that we will investigate our herbal resources, so that we will use the herbal medicine alongside the orthodox or modern medicine. That's the man Kwame Nkrumah. So, and apart from all these good things that he did for Ghana, the man did not stay in Ghana alone. All of you know, he brought in all the freedom fighters. Most of the freedom fighters came to school in Ghana. Your own former president, Mugabe, he came to Achimota School, Seren School, Achimota School, and after he had a scholarship to go and study in Britain, he came back and taught in a Seren School in Ghana and had a Ghanaian wife. But almost all the first African leaders, most of them were in Ghana, the school in Ghana, and were given scholarships to go and study so that they will be effective in their various countries. That's Kwame Nkrumah. And you know, it's Pan-Africanism traits that left to him and Haile Selassie of Ethiopia and others to form the OAU, to bring all the African states together. So, after Kwame Nkrumah, when we want to talk about him and his achievements, we will not finish today. And once Dr. Nana Dokwati is here, I want to curtail it so that we can ask questions. And when I do the questions time, most of these things will come up. Yeah. Look, thank you for giving me the opportunity.
You are very welcome, Brother JD. It's good to have you on the team. So please take note of some of those questions. We're going to be going to the questions, and we'll also ask our brother Theo there in the background. And Brother Theo, it's good to have you on the team to make sure that we remain live and that we're being heard globally. And whatever questions, comments coming through, please feel free to bring them in as we move along as well. So again, you are listening to Love Bay Talk Music Radio Show, the Afrobeat. We're glad that you're joining us here today. You are right. Dr. Francis, I like that because that's my namesake as well. Dr. Francis Kwame Nkrumah was a genius. I noticed that there were some people who were trying to criticize his version of leadership and saying that, he was distorting the Marxism and bringing in these ideas and that idea and that idea. So it did not remain what it ought to be. And I said, that's a mark of a true leader. You have to be eclectic. You bring in this idea and this idea. You know, he brought ideas from England, from North America, from Beijing, and you know, all these other places. He brought all that together, and then he says, I am African, so part of my Africanism has to be expressed within these ideas. And I think this is what made him one of the most powerful leaders in Africa, because he was looking at things not just from a Western perspective through his educational experience. He was also looking at it from a lived experience as an African. And I mean, that kind of an ideology of a new Africa had never been heard before, you know? And then you have other people who were trying to undermine him, which then brings us to that reality that colonization came to destroy Pan-Africanism. They were not happy to see him progress. So they did all they could to make sure that they would undermine him. And this is why, I mean, it makes me really, really sad that you know, just in I think they say February 24th, 1966. You see,
Yeah.
while in Beijing, they actually
Was it
organized.
West Day in the whole Africa.
That's right. It was the worst day in all Africa. While he was
Mhm.
busy, you see, this is one of the questions I'm going to be asking Dr. Nana Oduro here, because Dr. Nkrumah was focused on making sure that his ideologies were not just taught, but caught by others as he was trying to develop this new leadership of African leaders. But
Yeah.
we find that there was a gap somewhere. While he was busy doing this, there were other people who had not caught his vision. And so this is where you now find that, as you said, the worst day in Africa, that, you know, the army and the police would seize power, which then made it a dictatorship, a military rule, which had never been experienced before. And you're like, what happened? Weren't our brothers and sisters experiencing this Africanism that was happening? You know? So what are some of your thoughts in terms of what changed? How come that people who had seen his achievements from the very beginning, Ghana was like, you know, British colony. He comes in and he changes things around, and people were celebrating that. And in the process of educating and mentoring people, here are people within his own team, his own camp, who turned around and now they're biting him.
Yeah, but obviously, I mean, this is the way the imperialists operate. I mean, Nkrumah was very clear. If you read his book, Neo-Colonialism, the last stage of imperialism, I mean, he was very clear. Nkrumah knew exactly what he was doing, was basically a threat to the West. I mean, he said, let's get the political independence first, and all that is added to us. And that having to become political independent is not enough. We need to have economic independence. Now, when they saw the way the rate Nkrumah was going, not only developing Ghana, I think if the Nkrumah was just concentrating on Ghana, they'd be okay. But this guy, as Kobe JB was saying, is getting, Ghana became, if you like, political mecca for African liberation struggle. And, you know, most of these people were coming in, holding Ghana passport and traveling, being trained here and there, left, center, here and there, you know, in guerrilla warfare, you know, being trained. Nkrumah had an ideological, Kwame Nkrumah Economic and Political and Economic Ideological Institute, training people to understand the political economy of Africa, you know, so and so on and so forth. So he was a threat that if they don't curtail what he was doing, you know, it will actually going to destroy the interests of what they call it, the West.
Yeah.
And so what they did was to use what I call the comprador bourgeoisie, the local comprador bourgeoisie, which formed the basis of the military and the police to organize this push. You know, and remember, most of these people had their training in the West, Sandhurst, and so on and so forth. So in 2006, for instance, let me digress a little bit. The CIA, you know, every 40 years they have to publish, if you like, declassified documents. And if you go onto their website, you click declassified documents, you will see in 2006 they published what actually happened in Ghana, their agents. And most of these people who were part of the coup, or most of the people who were anti-Nkrumah or Nkrumah's opponent, were actually paid CIA agents. The people who did the coup were paid, listen to this, 1966, $13 million. They gave them $30 million. $30 million in 1966, a lot of money.
Yeah.
So Nkrumah was a threat. Now, the unfortunate aspect was that because the political elite, who were much more educated, were rather on the right, were the people who were the conservative, who were the neoliberals, and you know, Nkrumah has fallen out with them, because when Nkrumah came from UK and joined them, realized that look, these people, the agenda is very limited. You know, he want to go, he said independence now. They said no, independence in the possible near future. They said no, now. You know, are you with me? So this antagonism here and there, and the CIA and the MI6 and all this intelligence, foreign intelligence, they were not going to sit idle by to let Nkrumah, you know, get on with it. So that's the more reason why Nkrumah appealed to the young people, the youth people, and the people who were in the rural areas. But the real, the nouvelle rich, the conservatives, and some of the people who actually opposed to Nkrumah were royals, you know, from chieftaincy background here and there, who were lawyers, they saw Nkrumah as a threat. All they wanted is that they wanted Nkrumah, they want to be given time so they can actually follow the footsteps of the white man. In fact, one of the leading members of this group, the United Party, called Professor Buzia, who was Nkrumah's, led the team to come to Britain when Kwame Nkrumah tabled the motion of destiny in 1956. The motion of destiny was basically talking about the immediate political independence. They led a team, came to Britain, and he wrote to the Majesty that Britain has abandoned them. They should give them time. They should not approve this independence. They need more time to learn from them. They want to learn from the colonial masters. So they are not ready yet. So they should rush. I mean, can you imagine? I mean, this is an African man. He wants to learn from white people who have actually colonized and enslaved them all these years. This is the kind of leadership. So you could see there was this dichotomy in terms of ideological positions clearly established. And the West used these people against Nkrumah. Look, Nkrumah, why was he going to Hanoi? Nkrumah is an internationalist. He's a socialist and a Marxist, and he believed that, look, what was happening in Hanoi was wrong. The UN invited him as a peacemaker to go and try as much as possible to bring an end to the Vietnam War. And immediately they agreed to do that. It was a setup. They used these people against Nkrumah, paid them so much money, and overthrew everything, and completely destroyed the whole the African Revolution. 24 February 1966 is a dark day for Ghana and Africa. So that's the more reason, my brother. The people were used, and remember what Karl Marx, Malcolm X said, that even within the slaves, there were two different slaves, my brother. The home slave and the field slave. The field slave suffered the brutality from the slave master, being kicked here and there, be abused, so he hated the slave master. The home slave ate from the remnants of the master's table, wore the old clothes from his masters. In fact, even learn how to walk like the master, speak like the master. So somehow he thinks the master is okay. This is the thing that even today, not everybody is like you and I, who are progressive minded. Some of our people think that we should bring white people to come and rule Africa. There are people who are PhDs and they think that this independence thing was a mistake. Nkrumah has made a mistake of getting when the white man should come and rule us. And Nkrumah said, yes, neocolonialism will come and it will lead into recolonization. And today, look at the whole of Africa. We have been recolonized. Neocolonialism is part of our life now.
Yes.
Everywhere you see, the multinational companies have taken over. I mean, we have had 100 of years of gold exploitation, extracting gold in our Ghana. We don't own one single gold mining company, not even one Ghanaian owned company, all foreign companies. And they've come to destroy the ecology, destroy everything, our vegetation, creating a lot of problems for us. We have now got oil. God has been so gracious to us. Of all the things that we've done, we've given us oil. And oil, the whole oil that is dug, we only get 10%, less than 10% of it. 90% goes to, this so-called foreign investors.
Dr.
And Nkrumah, if you look at Nkrumah's book, Neocolonialism, the last stage of imperialism, he talks about the threat of foreign capital, as if he's talking to us today. The role that the IMF and the World Bank will do, the destruction of basically our economy to their benefit. And it's there, black and white. Now tell me, our new leaders who are ruling us, haven't they read? Some of them have come to the West to come and acquire all these qualifications here and there.
That's right.
But the kind of scholarship they got, you and I know, is purely wrong. And the thinking, as I said, some people think that the white man should be able to come back and rule us, and it's basically bunkums. It's madness. I mean, this is. I'm sorry, my language, but it's all about our people. So Nkrumah, some people were used. It was used because the West wanted Nkrumah out of the way, and today he's been vindicated. Today we are as poor as we were, during the colonial period. If Nkrumah has been able to stay on, I mean, if you take, I hope you have read the Lee Kuan Yew's book, From the Third World to the First World.
Yes.
He mentioned about his trip to Ghana, how he came and stayed in Clark's house and worked on Nkrumah, and the kind of things that Nkrumah was talking about. The idea that the state controls the resources and we use it to be able to build infrastructure. It's what has made Singapore. Singapore is a capitalist country, but it's the state that built all infrastructure. Every road you see in Singapore was built by the states. Most of the things that you see, all the infrastructure, all the things that they do, they used to build ships and all this. Now they are the leading foreign direct investment in the whole of Southeast Asia. How do they do it? It's the state. I mean, no foreign banks. All the Barclays banks, all these big HSBC banks in Singapore is owned and controlled by Singapore people. You can only have 10 to 15%, so that they will build local capital to develop their country.
That's right.
This is what Nkrumahism is all about. This is what Nkrumahism is all about. So the idea here said that Nkrumah used Marxism and socialism. People say that he didn't actually develop it the way Marx and Lenin talked about it. Why? Nkrumah wanted to make sure that.
That's right. He didn't have to, because he was unique, and he embraced who he was as an African, not just an African, but a Pan-Africanist. So he had to come up with his own version of political and economic. Whereas I think the Western world approach to education is very deficient, because it puts you into a mode and say, okay, this is how you're supposed to think, but it's not really allowing you the freedom to develop your own ways of doing things. One of the things that came up from one of the listeners and someone participating in the program is your comment on how do you think Dr. Nkrumah would have responded to some of this French menace that we're seeing in West Africa, aujourd'hui, today, as they would call it, French. I mean, you look at France. I was watching the most recent football, soccer, as the North Americans call it. The French soccer team looks very African. So they have turned and benefited a lot from Africa. And see what's happening in West Africa today. So what do you think, from the vision perspective of ideology, how would someone like him have responded from a Pan-Africanist perspective to what is happening between France and West Africa right now? Because
but Nkrumah said it all in his writings and his addresses. If you look at the first conference between African independent state, which was held in Accra in 1958, he warned them quite clearly to say that, look, some of you among us feel very comfortable being with the imperialists here, and they are even trying to divide us, to say that some people, some countries have more resources than others. Yes, so why should we come together? And he said, if we don't come together, the imperialists will basically will come in and exploit us and take our minerals away and impoverish us more. So we should unite. We don't need to trade with the West. We can trade among ourselves.
Yeah.
So Nkrumah, if he's alive today, will have said, yes, this is what I stood for. Pan-Africanism is not just something that hangs in the air. It's real. It's about self-determination. It's about equal opportunity. It's about recognizing the fact that you're an African and your innate ability as God given you, you'll be able to develop yourself. That's what Nkrumah stood for. So in answer to your question, what is happening in Niger and in Mali and Burkina Faso, here and there, is it by coincidence? I don't know whether you've listened to some of their speeches. They are mentioning Nkrumah's name. These young people, they quote Nkrumah. I mean, it's incredible. So Nkrumah never dies. That's the point we are making.
That's
now
right.
Today, if you listen to the Niger president when he went to Moscow in recent Russia, Africa, and I watch it on the RT news channel. He quoted Nkrumah profusely, continuously. And he says that what they are doing, they are not taking power for themselves. They are taking power for the people that they are people, and that they are not going to allow this continuation of exploitation. That their colonial masters continue to exploit them using their resources for the benefit, and even questioning the logic. Nkrumah questioned Houphouët-Boigny, who was in Ivory Coast, Côte d'Ivoire. How can you sign your birthright to France that all your money that you have, your central bank no control, you have to keep it in French bank.
France, yeah.
So that when you need money, you can only borrow. You borrow and then they add interest to take your own money. Nkrumah questioned that guy. But Houphouët-Boigny were stooges of the West. And in fact, they have to make sure that in successive governments, when there's election or those election, they sponsor candidates. I mean, look at what they did to Patrice Lumumba, Nkrumah's friend.
Yeah.
This is a democratically constitutionally elected prime minister of Congo. But Leopold and others they felt that this guy represented a threat. So using the UN, organized and killed him. They not only killed him, they cut his body into pieces and put it into acid. And then sponsored Mobutu Sese Seko for over 35 years, allowed this Western world to plunder the whole country. I mean, I don't know whether you've been to Congo Kinshasa or Congo Brazzaville.
I'm aware of that because they wanted to benefit from the system.
Yes, my brother, common infrastructure, roads linking up. No, the roads, infrastructure and everything is in areas where there's only money. You go to Bukavu, which is a boundary to Burundi and Rwanda, and you will weep. As if the people there are living in the what do you call it, 1,000 years old. And this was deliberate. And the whole of Nkrumah's book, I don't know if you have read it, The Congo. My brother, read it, and it's as if this man is a prophet. The Congo can feed the whole of Africa and even Europe. In terms of electricity, in terms of food basket, the whole Congo. So these people were deliberate, wanted to get rid of Lumumba, brought in Mobutu Sese Seko, and even now the whole Congo has been split into Kinshasa and Brazzaville. And we know that there's another guy called Ngwesu. He's there almost about 38 years. He doesn't want to go. He's still there and messing around. So all these things is about what Nkrumahism stands for. That first and foremost, we need to appreciate and understand the workings of imperialism. That imperialism is not a friend. That for them, they need to for them to survive, they need to exploit us.
Yeah.
The West are where they are because they exploit. I mean, Kwame, let me be very blunt. The whole so-called industrial revolution in Britain, how did it come about? It is through India and Africa. The whole industrial revolution, it's about getting cheap raw materials, and in India, Most of the cottage industries here and there were completely removed. Most of the technology that existed in Africa were removed, and it created the industrial revolution. So and it's going on in perpetuity, and it's not going to stop. So we need to have leaders who first and foremost know their history, who first and foremost are very grounded in the world political economy, who themselves are very selfless, and people who believe in social justice and equity and fairness, that they want to build an egalitarian society. The resources the countries have must be equally distributed for the benefit of people, and that we can use ordinary tax as a way of distributing income.
Dr. Nana Oduro, you are making me very, very angry, sir, in a good way. And we need to be agitated. We need that motivation. One of the things that we are wrestling with here is, as one of the listeners is asked the question, how then do we tackle? I know that with the legacy of Dr. Francis Kwame Nkrumah, there's a commitment to education. So what can we do to make sure that this Pan-African vision, this commitment to self-reliance, social justice, Pan-Africanism, self-determination, African personality, and anti-imperialism. And I think we need to go even beyond anti-imperialism, because I think we need to move beyond decolonization. Even though I'm trying to write a book on decolonization, I think we are past that. We need to be thinking Africanization. How do we perpetuate? How do we bring this vision?
My brother, it is. I will cut it short. We need a leadership, the kind of leadership that Nkrumah, the Mumbas of this world, the Nassers, and a leadership which is selfless, a leadership which is committed to improve the quality of its own people. A leadership cannot be sell out. We need a leadership, and that leadership can only come as a result of struggle, as a result of the kind of things that we are doing, sharing information, learning, and studying. Because if we continue to have this bourgeois democratic framework that we have, which is good, I don't criticize it, that every 4 years we go and vote and nothing changes. I have a son. My last born is a son, and he was 13 to 14 years. And I was traveling from UK to go to Ghana to go and vote. And he asked me something when we're traveling to go to the airport. And he said, but Daddy, the last election you voted. So this is democracy. This election, if it's good, why does it, every time you have to go, nothing changes? Then you go and vote. This is a 14-year-old boy. He asked me a question. That this election that we are talking about,
go vote and change and bring in.
Yes, and I was taken aback. In fact, I was even fumbling to respond. So it took so many years for South Africa to go. He said, Daddy, the question you are not answering me. This election is going to bring change, isn't it? Yes. So if it's going to bring change, why do we continue to vote when the change is not coming? The point needs to be made, comrades, that look, with the kind of leadership that we have in Africa today, if we don't do what Nkrumah did, positive action. Nkrumah taught us one thing: the organization, and Comrade JB will tell you in the CPP, that's our team. Organization decides. We need to be able to mobilize and be very radical. We need to be very militant. We need to be able to test our position in the street by being in a positive action. That's what Kwame Nkrumah did. Organizing, mobilizing young people to boycott, the Europeans, their stores, making sure that there will be demonstration as we speak today. Since Thursday, there's been 3 days of the street demonstration in Ghana against the government by the young people who have been completely disenfranchised. And that's the beginning of what it gives me hope. And what we need is for this thing to be directed. And we have the Convention People's Party and Socialist Movement of Ghana here and there working hand in hand with some of these pressure groups, to be able to make that change. So the question is actually about leadership. But with this kind of leadership that we have, my brother, it doesn't bode well. We need to have a leadership.
Dr. Oduro, I'm going to press this further.
Yeah.
We agree we have a leadership problem.
Yeah.
How do we groom? How do we develop? How do we come up with this kind of leadership you are sharing with us? I know that the masses can come around and say enough is enough, but how do we change our mindset so that we're moving away from being selfish to being selfless and thinking not just our own individual countries, but pan-Africa. We're thinking
Yeah.
intercontinental here. How do we get that kind of leadership? I mean, you are a rare breed, sir, if I may say that bluntly. You are a rare breed. We wish we had more and more people like you in some of our universities, in some of our institutions of learning, so that we see things much, much broader. How do we get more of you?
My brother, as we are doing today, and like many people here and there, wherever we are, whether it's Zimbabwe, Ghana, Nigeria, whatever, we need to be identified with certain groups here and there. But the most important thing is that collectively, we need to be able to be engaging people and in our own small way to engage people to talk about some of these challenges and offer people hope that there's an alternative. My brother, it's not going to be easy. One of the biggest problems that we have is that we are so impatient. We want things to change here and then. Sometimes we even support people to come and take power, only to find out that in fact what they have come to do is not. It's even worse than what we had. I would mean. We need to be patient. We need to be able to engage with people. We need to be able to talk about going to study groups and there. I mean, JB will tell you, when we're doing this CPP activism here and there, we had some network in the university where we meet a meeting group of people here. We didn't just come out to be where we are. We learned our history. We learned about our writings. We learned about Nkrumah, and we have a group of people who are meeting here and there. I think there must be joint up action. Today we are doing. We are in Toronto. We are JB is in Accra. I am in UK, and so on and so forth. There must be a joint up thinking in terms of progressive alliance across the continent. Identifying groups and individuals which we think we share common ideas and views here and there in a much more gradual way. Now, the way that Burkina Faso went, the way that Niger went, the way that Mali went, it is because some people, if you listen to how these people came, they started getting books and reading. They were reading about people like Franz Fanon. This guy in Mali, so he started reading about Franz Fanon, The Wretched of the Earth, the book that he held. He started reading about Africa must unite. And within the military, they started doing some study group here and there. We need to intensify that. We need to intensify that because within the bourgeois democratic framework, it is limited.
That's right.
And for me, I always tell my colleagues in CPP that in Africa, we don't have politics. It's monetics. Today, if you want to, it's monetics. If you want to be able to stand, if JB is very popular, very good idea. If you want to stand as a member of parliament in his Kwu constituency or whatever, you need to have about not less than $1 million. Where is he going to find it? How is he going to find money to print T-shirts, have vehicles branded, have people to buy food and go to election? And then when he wins, that money, he has to find money to pay for it. So he'll be involved in deals and all kinds of deals so that he can recoup the money that he's invested.
Yeah.
So it is monetics. So this bourgeois democratic framework, that is a limitation. However, it is better than having a brutal dictator who comes in and says, look, I'm not going to allow anybody to hear, me, for instance. I mean, what we are experiencing in Ghana is more dictatorial. We have a tyrant. We have people who are using even the constitution, in a much more negative way. However, the route for you to do is to be able to use the democratic system to get rid of them and get that democratic space, the political space that we need to organize and mobilize properly. And I feel strong that was going to happen. So this leadership thing, my brother, it cannot just come from the air. Yeah. We need to work on it. It is about you and I, identify people with like-mindedness. I mean, today I've established contact with you through my comment, JB. It shouldn't be only today. We should be able to be interacting, share ideas, getting papers to you. You also linking somebody in Zimbabwe. I have a very good friend in Zimbabwe, who's a fantastic guy. He works in the UN. What is his name? I'm sure you know him. He works in the UN. He's a Pan-Africanist, and I remember the name and mention. Okay. So we are working with people like this, and then there's this Pan-African movement, which is in Africa. It's not as radical. It doesn't have that kind of resources, but it's good. It's a start. So for us to get the kind of leadership that is in sync with the aspirations and the needs of our people, we need to be able to work with people and try to get this, leadership. If we are going to just plug somebody from somewhere to come and lead us, the danger is that this person does not own, have any affiliation or doesn't believe in whatever, can easily be bought by the multinational companies and actually, betray us. So there's a lot of work to be done.
You're absolutely right, Dr. Oduro. Dr. Nana Oduro, my brother, we cannot thank you enough for motivating us. This is very, very inspirational. And like we said, this is just the beginning. And we're grateful that our brother JD, all the way from Accra, has connected us with you. And we definitely want to see you come back. In the interest of time and other responsibilities of the day, and we want to respect your time as well. We are very, very grateful. Again, to all our listeners, you've been listening to Love Bay Afrobeat Music Tick Radio, coming all the way from the studios in Toronto, and of course, connected worldwide. We have our brothers around the world literally listening to us today, and we're just so delighted. I'm going to have each one of you just final words as we wrap up in a minute, just to tell us what's on your mind as we move forward. We talked about the 3Ds. We want to dialogue to discover things that will help us to decide on the next steps. As you have said, Dr. Oduro, the best is yet to come. You didn't say those. You didn't say that in those words, but this is just the beginning. We have a lot of work to do. So I'm going to start with our brother Theo. Brother Theo, what comes to mind? Parting words as we wrap up.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mpindo, and thanks, Dr. Drew Carton. I'm so delighted right now. I'm more optimistic than ever because of what is going on in West Africa or in Africa right now, because the youth are now saying enough is enough. We can't take it any longer. We have leaders like Thomas Sankara, who studied, who was a student of Dr. Nkrumah. They read this as young guys. So I think the revolution has begun. To quote Julius Malema in South Africa, he is saying that the new Africa is right here. We are not going to go back. Because, you see, if you study the words of Dr. Nkrumah, there is nobody out there right now in Africa whose achievements can even go an inch towards what Dr. Nkrumah did. He was able to take Africa from one point to educate the leaders who went into their countries to make changes. You see, all those leaders from Nyerere, Kaunda, and all the others, the patriots, I call them the patriots, they were students of Nkrumah. They owed nothing to anybody. They owed something to the people of Africa. And today we don't have anything. It's me, myself, and I, and my families. They don't think about the people. So I think what is actually happening in Africa is a revolution, and it's not going to go back, because now we know who is with us and who is against us. But we are not going to look back. We are always going to look forward. Dr. Kwame Nkrumah said, forward ever, backwards never. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Brother Theo. Brother JD, parting comments.
Yeah, thank you, Doc. I believe that every African should find a book, Last Days of Imperialism. The Last Days of Imperialism is a neocolonialism, and the Last Days of Imperialism. Yeah, that's it. And Dr. Odo, I want to ask a question.
Go
ahead. With this internal fights between countries, Sudan, Ethiopia, and other places, don't you think the time is ripe for Africa to have the African High Command?
Oh, it is long overdue.
This is a question for Dr. Drew. If you are summing up, then you answer it for me.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. 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 Go ahead. Are you finished?
Yes.
Yeah,
he was
are you
basically
finished?
waiting. Yeah, he was basically waiting for you to respond.
Oh no. I'm just
okay.
giving the rest of my time.
Okay, so I'll respond when I get my time. Mm-hmm. JB, go ahead, or you finish? Can I? You want me to?
I'm giving the rest of my time to you. I'm giving the rest of my time to you.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much. Oh, you are very kind. Comrade, let me once again thank you sincerely from the bottom of my heart for giving me the opportunity to be able to share my ideas and for us to be able to connect as a way of trying to build the basic the foundation for real Pan-Africanism, that needs to happen. We year in, year out, we celebrate Kwame Nkrumah, what he stands for, he stood for, and what was his legacy and achievement here and there. We shouldn't wait till his birthday to do that. I think we should have a system in place that will continuously, engage in this kind of discussions, and the more we do that, the penny will drop. People really appreciate exactly where the man came from. So that's the part of the education that we need to be engaging. The other two is that Nkrumah has left us political capital. And what he has left political capital is that the work that he did through his writing and through his speeches and through the work that he did when he's in government, is something that we can use to build, build on to be able to what I call the second liberation movement for Africa. We also need to, if we are Pan-Africanists, then we should not only be looking in terms of our internal countries, small little countries. We need to be looking in terms of how do we collaborate or how do we work with other groups in other places here and there, and try to build a groundswell of opinion, a groundswell of ideas that will actually, stand the test of time, that will be able to get the kind of leadership that will be able to defeat imperialism. I think the JB, your question about whether African High Command is due, I say it's long overdue, because you see what Nkrumah talked about African High Command. He says that if we are Pan-Africanists and we are looking internally, inwardly, to be able to develop our own economies and build our own future, then we must also be able to have an African High Command, which is like a standby that will be able to intervene when there are problems in Ethiopia and in Eritrea and in Sudan. We should not be waiting for United Nations and the West to be giving us crumbs, before we can even go in here and there. We should have the African High Command. And so the answer is that it's long overdue. It's long overdue. But the question is that the current AU has the willpower to be able to establish that. The current AU, as it stands, is very, very weak. And remember when Nkrumah and others built the OAU, which was the precursor to the AU, the Nkrumah envisioned to have all these African High Command, even have that what do you call it, the economic, trading, what do you call it, networks, and eventually also be able to stop this balkanization of Africa into some kind of Nigeria, Uganda, is Africa is one continent and one people. So there was no need. Today, if you want to travel from Ghana to go to Zimbabwe or to South Africa, they will ask you have to have a visa. Even if your passport, why should we? If we're Africans, we're Africans. We should be able to, Nkrumah believe in that. We should have passportless. People should be able to move freely and move, within the confines of law, basically, anyway, and so on and so forth. Today, look at what is happening in South Africa. That South Africa of all have become xenophobic. Black people fighting black people and call them foreigners. I mean, where would South Africa be without Nigeria, without Ghana, without Senegal, where civil servants were asked to pay, pay money, to help the African liberation movement in South Africa, where Ghana had to sacrifice so much to train, the likes of, you know, what do you call it, Mugabe, the likes of Mandela, the likes of what do you call it, all the ANC leadership, and even South African People's Organization. Let me tell you a story. I used to work with Ghana Institute of Management and Public Administration. In fact, they actually recruited me from UK, Ghana. And my brief, basically, I was building a network, a system of training people, you know, in the public sector. But of course, I have a bias, you know, bringing in quite a lot of, you know, left-wing ideas, you know, to the public sector here and there. And somehow they love it. So we had a contract to go to Namibia to establish a similar one in Namibia. We did one in Gambia, so we went to Namibia. And when we went to Namibia, the Prime Minister met us with his team, and I was leading the team to present a paper. You know, the man spoke my local language, Chi and Ga. So I was surprised. He welcomed us and he was laughing. All of them. There were 9. 6 of them speaks that language eloquently. He said, "Look," and you held his passport. He said, "This is my Ghana passport. You are my brothers. I went to school in Achimota. I went to school in Ghana, my secondary school and everything. Ghana has made me what I am. So not only the reason why we chose you, we want you to come here and there. But when you finish this program, which is about 4 days, I want to give you another 4 days holiday, you know, and take good care of you the way Ghanaians look after." And we were so happy. We were treated, you know, like kings and queens. You know, I with me. The man remembered. He said, Sam Nujoma. In fact, we even went to go and see Sam Nujoma. He was a bit old. And when we went, they said we were Ghanaians. This man apparently has not been able to stand up. He stood up. My Ghana people, my brothers. Oh, my brother. In fact, as I've got goosebumps on me. This is the kind of thing that Nkrumah did. And today, you see what apartheid has done to our people? It has completely destroyed them. They cannot even think straight. That they see Nigerians and West Africans and other people in South Africa as a threat. But we were there. We helped them to be able to liberate themselves because they are our brothers. But that's the word. That's the work of imperialism. So for me, I have no doubt that, you know, for what is happening, you know, there is a move, you know, growing, you know, in West Africa, and it will not end in West Africa. It will go to East Africa. It will go to South Africa. It will happen. And when that happens, then we realize that like imperialism. And I think I also want to support what Comrade JB said. We should all encourage people to get a copy of Nkrumah's book, Neo-Colonialism, the Last Stage of Imperialism. It's a masterpiece. It's a masterpiece, my brother. It's a blueprint for everybody. You read it, then you understand the dynamics of what is happening now. I raise my case. I thank you so much.
Thank you.
May we have the opportunity to meet again. And I'm very, very grateful.
Thank you, sir.
JB, my greetings to the committee. Tell them I'm on my way coming back. I'm coming back. You know, we are going to rebuild the CPP and bring Nkrumah's ideas back. I thank you and I salute you all. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Nana.
Okay, I'll do that. I'll do that, sir.
We really appreciate that. And listen, I'm going to sell my shirt to have enough money to buy that book. So I'm going to have a copy in the next few days.
Yes.
Ladies and gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, globally, we know that we have been so blessed to have Dr. Nana Bright Oduro with us this morning as we have been reflecting on Africa today, looking at the legacy and thinking about moving forward as far as the contributions of Dr. Francis Kwame Nkrumah and his contributions not just to Ghana, but to the whole of Africa and the world at large. We are grateful for his input. I mean, he impacted and inspired a lot of people. I mean, we think of the Jomo Kenyattas, we think of Mzee Kambarage Nyerere, we think of Dr. Kamuzu Banda, we think of Dr. Kenneth Kaunda.
Kamuzu Banda lived in Ghana. Kamuzu Banda, he had a clinic. Yes, he lived in Ghana.
We actually heard that. I mean, he influenced so many. I mean, of course, with President Robert Gabriel Mugabe and ending up with Mama Sali there, and we have a strong connection. And then when you actually look at that, you see how well he was thinking about Africa. And you're right, sir. We need leaders who see not just our own individual countries, but who see that whatever is happening in their countries should be a reflection of what's happening around the whole of the whole continent, and making sure that we commit to that self-reliance and social justice, pan-Africanism, self-determination, African personality. And I think you have touched on so many things that give us food for thought, and so we'll definitely come back and invite you to join us again. So again, to our listeners, thank you for joining us today. I love Bay Afrobeat Music Tick Radio, coming all the way from the studios in Toronto. And our brother Theo, thank you so much for creating this platform for us. And again, brother JD, all the way from Accra, Medasipe. And we're looking forward to connecting again. Thank you, Dr. Oduro, and have a great day. And we'll look forward to more fruitful conversations. Have a great day, everybody. Thank you very much for being with us today. Adios.
Bye bye. Bye bye.